welcome to episode 160 of The Route. The Route is a glorified coffee chat and podcast form that takes you from A to B with a new guest every episode. And as always, I'm your host, Christopher Nascimento, and let's get started. Before we begin, as always, just a couple things to cover. First, if you haven't already, follow, subscribe, do whatever you need to do to follow along with the podcast, whether it's on audio, so that's Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, I believe 6 others, so we're on 10 audio platforms there, and on YouTube at the Routecast there, just so, when we release an episode, you can be up to date with that, and then engage with us there. Rate 5 stars, like, comment, etc. It allows the podcast to grow a bit easier, and as I mentioned, we're on YouTube. You can find the video podcast there. And last but not least, as I mentioned, for the username for YouTube at the Routecast, that's the same username. You can find us on all social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok will maybe start up again soon. And most importantly, for the theme of this podcast, LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with myself, the guests, maybe like-minded people, you can grow, maintain, start your network by connecting with us there. So it's at the Routecast on all platforms, especially LinkedIn and YouTube. With that now said, we can get into today's episode. Today's guest is brought to you by Zoom. In the world of partnerships, there's a simple principle: you adapt or you die. In this fast-paced industry, you can't afford to miss a beat, and that's where Zoom will help you win each and every time. Zoom provides premier real-time data insights for partnerships across broadcast, streaming, and social like no one else. They're always ready, and detailed analytics help you get the upper hand and save time in your day-to-day reporting. So if you're ready to upgrade your reporting today, make the smart choice and choose Zoom. With that, today's guest. So if you haven't followed along to date so far, this is our 160th episode. Since episode 0, when I first started the podcast, I said every 20 episodes I will take the time to maybe just do a recap episode about my own route. So it's the route within the route is what I typically like to say. And, with that, they're a bit shorter, but it allows me to, be when I'm on that 103-year-old rocking chair where I'm just kind of thinking back and forth about all the cool things I've been able to do. I can listen to the podcast and make that moment a bit easier when I'm 103. So if you're not interested, tune into next week's episode, but this is the recap episode and the route within the route with myself this week. So with that now covered, kind of have a little bit of a, let's say, roadmap I'll go through just in regards to some things to cover since the last one, which was episode 140, I believe, in June. So I'll just kind of fill in some gaps, maybe fill in some things in regards to where the podcast is at now, because there's been some changes. But yeah, I guess we can kind of just start with that. So if you haven't noticed yet, the podcast, which was previously, a sports business podcast, is what I was referred to, and it was at The Route Sports on all platforms. It recently changed to The Routecast, so The Route and then CAST. And the reason for that is, I think at the 150 episode mark, if I'm not mistaken, around the fall time, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with the podcast, and maybe that's a theme for where I was at that point in time, and I thought there's maybe some things I could look into. I felt the story of sharing some of the routes in sports was, let's say, covered. So with that, I've always had an interest in, businesses, how people do things, going to a business and understanding how it came to be. So I thought, hey, it'd be great if I can maybe expand the routes that we share, or the stories we share beyond just sports business. So that's why I kind of dropped the sports part of it and just went back to, sharing all routes and really just trying to focus on how people go from A to B, right? So that's kind of the thing I've been trying to focus on now, and just have people that, I'm interested in how their story came to be. So that's something that will be going on from now in the future. Not to say we won't have sports-related guests. I think episode 162, which should be coming out in 2 weeks or so if you're listening to this as soon as it comes out, that'll be with someone from FanDuel, so they'll kind of give some breakdowns into their sports trader role, which is pretty cool. but for the most part, it'll be different people from all different types of industries, which you can kind of look forward to. So with that now covered, I guess we'll get more specifically into my route. So with that, I believe, let's say June is when episode 140 last came out, where I did the route within the route. I was still working on White Whale Marketing full time. That was my sports marketing agency, for those of you that don't know. And I was doing some partnership consulting for some clients there. And it was pretty cool work. It was very interesting. Loved what I was doing. I felt like I was getting some great traction. I was meeting with people like McDonald's, Nissan, TELUS, some big fast food chains, Tim Hortons, different ones like that, Pure Later. And I was really feeling like I was getting some traction, getting my feet underneath me, and starting to build that up. But, sometimes not everything works out and you get thrown a curveball. And, things kind of come to a halt. I won't go too much into it, just in regards to what happened. I don't know if you can really go into too much of that stuff. But, yeah, not everything works out, and it's too bad because I felt like there was a really great pipeline of partnerships that I built up for the fall time when marketing budgets opened up, and yeah, things happen, right? And that then led me to maybe take some time and look at what I wanted for the rest of my career. One of the big things that kind of cured in that moment was I no longer really wanted to take all the risk in some of the projects I was working on. I felt I was kind of doing that for 3 years, finally got a little bit of stability, and I didn't really want to kind of go backwards, let's say, right? So with that, I took some time in the summer to just see what I wanted to do next, whether it was continue on with the business and maybe go more risk and medium reward is what I'd say, continue on in sports business, or even just look at a different career as a whole and maybe focus more on the business side of things, right? Because that's initially what I got my degree in. It wasn't for sports management, sports marketing. It was a Bachelor of Commerce degree, and kind of focusing on that stuff because I do still really enjoy that. And that was much harder than I would have expected, just in regards to, having those internal, conversations, trying to understand, hey, what am I good at? What am I bad at? What needs to be improved? And where can I be of value for people? And yeah, it was quite the undertaking. And I think what I ultimately came to the realization of was I needed to get some wins under my belt, right? I think I was taking a lot of risks, trying a bunch of different projects, failing, growing, which was good. But at the same time, I felt like I needed to get some wins to kind of prove to myself I could do some of the things I was doing. I felt it was a good stage in my career to kind of do that, right? To maybe take a step back so we could take some leap forwards. And I guess with that too, I think everything I was doing to date was pretty cool, very interesting, but I was the one kind of providing myself with those opportunities. So I don't know where I would have stood otherwise, right? If someone else was the one handing out those opportunities. So I felt if I was able to maybe, let's say, legitimize my experience to others and get in a role somewhere where I could use that as a measuring stick to compare to others and see where I was at, I felt like that would be a good thing to do and kind of, build that foundation, learn from others, and kind of go on from there. And then, yeah, that kind of led me to the path of applying to jobs, interviewing in a bunch of different realms. I was kind of open. I wasn't really set on sports, tech, business. I really just wanted to see what was out there. Had some really cool interviews, even interviewed with Hockey Canada quite a bit. Unfortunately, that didn't come about, but I still got some great insights in interviews. And ultimately, I landed with Geotech, which is a construction tech company, and it's out here in Ottawa. And yeah, I thought it was just really cool. Lots of room for growth. Somewhere I felt I could maybe prove myself and be rewarded, if so. And it's been really great so far. I learned a lot. Really think I've been getting everything out of it that I initially wanted, right? And I'm about 2 months in at the time of this recording, and just finished my first full month calling, and broke some records, so that was good. So I'm really starting to gained some traction and can't really complain from there. And I guess from that standpoint, that kind of just gets us to, hey, what's going on with, white whale marketing and maybe even the route to an extent. And I guess with that, white whale marketing is probably, or I can say for sure at the moment, the sports marketing consultation services is not going to be continuing, at least for the foreseeable future. It's just something I didn't think had the legs to maybe last long term, as I mentioned. But I think what it'll ultimately form into is just what it always kind of maybe was supposed to be or was always destined to be, which was, dabbling in projects that maybe, ignite creativity, collaboration, and excitement for, my personal enjoyment and others, right? So I think that's something I'd love to kind of continue on and just try some different projects out and see where things go. So maybe stay tuned to the White Whale marketing channels in regards to what kind of comes out. But I have a ton of business ideas I'd love to try out over time, and I think that's where I'm going to use that platform or even that umbrella, that basis to kind of go on from. And then as for the route, I think as I mentioned earlier, it's obviously going to continue on, change some things around. It's going to be a playground just to kind of meet people, test new tools, similar to what I'm using now. It's a little bit of a different tool. Can get maybe AI involved just in regards to making clips and trying some different graphics out, just to kind of test things out and just have an area to have some fun with it. So definitely it's going to keep going. Have some cool guests lined up coming here in the next few weeks. And obviously we got to build up a base again in regards to an audience that's beyond just that sports focused fanatics, kind of going on from there, and really people that just want to learn about different people's careers, the routes, and how maybe to kind of learn from their experiences. So that's probably it, I'd say, for the route within the route, episode 160 with me. I like to keep these ones fairly short because they take place every few months or so. But yeah, that's a little bit about what's going on with myself. Love to kind of stay connected with those I'm chatting with. If you want to connect with myself as well, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. But with that said, that's episode 160. Stay tuned to episode 161, and we'll be back to the regular scheduled programming.